Book of Parables. This book was very special. It was said to hold stories that were so wise and powerful they could teach anyone who read them the secrets of the universe. The book was old, its pages yellowed with age, but it glowed with a magical light that never faded. The Book of Parables was kept in a grand library in the kingdom of Eldoria. This library was no ordinary place. It had towering shelves filled with books from all over the world. The walls were decorated with ancient paintings and tapestries that told stories of heroes, monsters, and gods. In this library lived a wise old librarian named Thaddeus. Thaddeus had spent his entire life reading the books in the library, but the Book of Parables was his favorite. He believed that the stories in this book could change the world. One day, as Thaddeus was dusting the shelves, he noticed a small boy peeking through the doorway. The boy's name was Leo, and he was very curious about the world. He loved to hear stories and learn new things. "Come in, young one," Thaddeus called with a kind smile. "What brings you to the library today?" "I want to learn about the Book of Parables," Leo said, his eyes shining with excitement. "I've heard it has the most amazing stories." Thaddeus's eyes twinkled with delight. "Ah, the Book of Parables. You have chosen wisely, my young friend. Sit down and I will tell you the stories from this magical book." Thaddeus opened the Book of Parables and began to read. The first story was about a brave little ant named Andy. Once, in a bustling ant colony, there lived an ant named Andy. Andy was small, even for an ant, but he had a big heart. One day, a terrible storm hit the colony. The rain poured down, and the wind howled, threatening to wash away their home. All the ants were scared, but Andy knew they had to do something. He climbed to the top of a rock and called out to his friends. "We must work together to save our home," he shouted. The other ants looked at Andy and saw the determination in his eyes. They gathered around him and followed his lead. They built barriers to stop the rainwater and dug channels to redirect the flow. It was hard work, but they didn't give up. By the time the storm ended, the colony was safe. The other ants cheered and lifted Andy onto their shoulders. "3 cheers for Andy, the brave ant!" they shouted. Andy smiled and said, "We did it together. That's what makes us strong." Thaddeus turned the page to another story. This one was about a kind and generous tree named Tara. In a beautiful forest, there stood a tall and sturdy tree named Tara. Tara loved to help the creatures that lived in the forest. She provided shade for the deer, homes for the birds, and fruit for the hungry animals. One hot summer, the forest experienced a terrible drought. The streams dried up and the plants wilted. The animals were thirsty and hungry. Tara knew she had to do something to help her friends. "Come, take shelter under my branches," Tara said. She gave her leaves to the deer to eat and her fruit to the birds and other animals. She even let the animals drink the sap from her trunk. As the days went by, Tara grew weaker and weaker, but she never complained. She was happy to help her friends. One night, a magical fairy appeared in the forest. She had heard about Tara's kindness and wanted to help. "Dear Tara," the fairy said, "because of your generosity, I will grant you a wish." Tara thought for a moment and then said, "I wish for the forest to be healthy and full of life again." The fairy waved her wand, and in an instant, the forest was lush and green. The streams flowed with crystal clear water, and the plants bloomed with vibrant colors. The animals rejoiced and thanked Tara for her selflessness. Chapter 5. The Parable of the Honest Woodcutter. Thaddeus smiled as he turned to the next story. It was about an honest woodcutter named Hans. Hans was a poor woodcutter who lived in a small village. He worked hard every day, chopping wood to sell in the market. Despite his poverty, Hans was always honest and fair. One day, as Hans was cutting wood by the river, his axe slipped from his hands and fell into the water. He tried to reach it, but the river was too deep and fast. Hans sat down and sighed, wondering how he would earn a living without his axe. Suddenly, a shimmering figure rose from the river. It was the river spirit. She held 2 axes in her hands, one made of gold and the other of silver. "Is this your axe?" the spirit asked, showing the golden axe. Hans shook his head. "No, that's not mine." "Is this your axe?" the spirit asked again, showing the silver axe. Hans shook his head once more. "No, that's not mine either." The spirit smiled and then held out Hans's old, worn-out axe. "Is this your axe?" she asked. Hans's face lit up. "Yes, that's mine. Thank you so much." The spirit was impressed by Hans's honesty. "Because you have been truthful, I will give you all 3 axes," she said. Hans was overjoyed. He thanked the spirit and returned to his village with the axes. He sold the gold and silver axes and used the money to help his fellow villagers. Hans's honesty brought him great fortune, and he was loved and respected by all. Thaddeus's eyes sparkled as he turned to the next story. It was about a wise old owl named Olivia. In a quiet forest, there lived an owl named Olivia. Olivia was known for her wisdom and knowledge. Animals from all over the forest came to her for advice. One day, a young fox named Felix came to Olivia. He was troubled and unsure of what to do with his life. "Wise Olivia," Felix said, "I feel lost. I don't know what my purpose is." Olivia nodded and said, "Follow me, and I will show you something." She led Felix to the top of a hill where they could see the entire forest. "Look at the forest," Olivia said. "Every creature here has a role to play. The bees pollinate the flowers, the birds sing to bring joy, and the trees provide shelter and food." Felix looked around and nodded, but he still felt confused. "But what is my role?" he asked. Olivia smiled and said, "Your role is to be yourself, explore, learn, and grow. In time, you will find your place." Felix thought about Olivia's words and decided to explore the forest. He made new friends, helped those in need, and discovered his talents. Over time, Felix became known as a brave and kind-hearted fox who brought peace and harmony to the forest. Thaddeus turned the page to another story. This one was about a patient turtle named Timmy. Timmy the turtle lived by a beautiful lake. He was very slow, but he was also very patient. Timmy believed that good things came to those who waited. One sunny day, Timmy decided to visit his friend Sammy, a rabbit who lived on the other side of the lake. Timmy started his journey early in the morning, knowing it would take him all day to get there. As Timmy slowly made his way around the lake, he met many animals who were in a hurry. A squirrel rushed by, a deer leaped over him, and a bird flew past him. Each one laughed at Timmy for being so slow. But Timmy didn't mind. He just smiled and kept going at his own pace. "Patience is a virtue," he said to himself. By the time the sun was setting, Timmy finally reached Sammy's home. Sammy was so happy to see his friend and welcomed him warmly. "Thank you for coming all this way, Timmy," Sammy said. "You must be tired." Timmy smiled and said, "I'm just happy to be here with you, my friend." That evening, as they watched the stars together, Sammy realized that Timmy's patience and determination had taught him an important lesson. He decided to be more patient and appreciate the journey, just like Timmy. Thaddeus turned to the final story in the Book of Parables. It was about a loyal dog named Max. Max was a loyal and brave dog who lived with a kind farmer named Ben. Max and Ben were the best of friends and did everything together. One night, a terrible storm hit the farm. The wind howled and the rain poured down, flooding the fields. Ben was worried about his animals and went out to check on them. As Ben was trying to save the animals, he slipped and fell into a deep, fast-flowing river. Max saw his friend in danger and without a second thought, jumped into the water to save him.